everyone, it's Allie and welcome to my channel, and today I'm super excited to talk with you about all the books I read during the month of August and everything that I hope to read during the month of September. Alright you guys, so I am especially eager to read everything I have lined up for September. I feel like it could honestly be a complete 5-star month from me. I picked out 10 books that I have been really itching to get to that very much fit the fall vibes, and I do think all of those books could be 5 stars. But before we get into the TBR, I want to go through all the books that I read in August. I did read 8 books, and I will of course let you know what I thought about them. I feel like it's always so impressive at the end of the month when you just pull all the books that you did read together. I feel like I don't read a crazy amount of hours, I just do make time for it every day, and I don't have the craziest social life, so a lot of evenings I am at home, so I do end up reading for 2 to 3 hours sometimes. So yeah, I feel like I get a lot of comments that are like, how do you read so much? I don't really think I do read super quickly. I probably read a little bit faster than the average person just because I do read a lot. But yeah, it's all about what you make time for. I do have other hobbies I'm trying to spend more time on as well, but I just find reading is a great way to both start the day and end the day. But I did end up reading 8 books this month. Some of them were pretty hefty, some of them were really quick reads, and I pretty much did stick to my TBR, except there were a couple of books that were more summary that by the end of the month, honestly by like the middle of the month, I was feeling the thrillers a lot more. So I swapped out, I think, the nonfiction book about the Churchill sisters as well as The Island of Missing Trees for 2 thrillers. So I just need to remember this every year because I feel like I always want to put summer books in for August, but every year I seem to be ready for just the moodier thrillers. But enough chit chat, let's go ahead and get started with the first book that I read during August, and that is the 3rd book in the Cormoran Strike series, and I've kind of enjoyed just starting every month with the next book in the series. I feel like I've talked about these books so much just because I am reading 1 book a month, but just in case you haven't seen any of my other videos, this is basically just a detective series written by Robert Galbraith, aka J.K. Rowling, so you know they're gonna be well written. And I am not a massive detective series kind of person, but I am really enjoying these books, not so much for the crimes, although I feel like they're all very interesting, but more so for the character development and just like all the other stuff that's going on. So just like the Harry Potter books, these are getting thicker and thicker as the series goes on. I did give this book 5 stars. I gave the first one 4.5 stars, the second one 5 stars, and then this one as well 5 stars. This had one of my favorite like mysteries so far because it did follow a serial killer, so I thought that was very interesting. Love reading about serial killers, never want to meet one in my life. So yeah, would not recommend just picking this book up out of the blue, but I would recommend this series if you haven't read it yet. Next up, I did start a more lighthearted crime type series, and that is the Finlay Donovan series. So this is the first one, Finlay Donovan is Killing It, and I really liked this because it kind of gave like rom-com energy and like almost rom-com writing style, but it really wasn't a romance at all. Like there is a little bit in there, but it's definitely a major subplot, which I like. So I wouldn't say this is like my new favorite book, but I am excited to read the rest of the series, and I feel like when I'm in the mood for something that's a little bit more lighthearted, I will definitely reach for one of these books. So I did give this 4 stars, and if you are someone who likes more of a cozy mystery with good characters, I would recommend giving this series a try. I think it's pretty hit or miss, but I think it's a miss for a lot of people because they come into the series with too high of expectations. So just come into it knowing it's going to be a pretty lighthearted read, nothing too crazy going on, but it is a fun read. Then I went a little bit darker. I did spend about a week reading Bridge of Clay. It's by Marcus Zusak or Zusak. I need to like look up how to say his name and I keep forgetting. He is the author of The Book Thief, which is one of my favorite books of all time. Highly recommend reading that. And do let me know if you want me to make a video maybe of what I think are currently my top 10 books of all time. I feel like it definitely changes, honestly, like by the day, what I think are my favorite books. But that could be a fun video, and The Book Thief would definitely be in there. Bridge of Clay, not too surprisingly, has a very similar writing style to The Book Thief, although the subjects are quite different in the sense that The Book Thief is talking about World War II and Nazi Germany, while this book is basically like a family saga. And I really loved the idea idea of this book, and I did really like it overall. I did give it 4 stars. For me, it did drag on a little bit too long. I felt like there could have been some editing down. And this author does write kind of like in choppy sentences, which I think works sometimes, but sometimes it's almost difficult to read. He has a much more like artistic way of writing, I would say, than just like the average author. But I really did like this story a lot, which follows this family, but specifically a brother. I think there's at least like 4 or 5 brothers, and they live on their own, and you kind of find out through flashbacks throughout the book what happened to their parents, and you hear about the parents' story and how they met. So yeah, I really did like the story overall. It just felt like there were some things that could have been a little bit different for me to give it 5 stars. But if you're looking for something a little bit different, a good piece of literary fiction, and you do like family sagas, I would recommend this one. Okay, and then we reached the point in the month where I really just got the itch to read some thrillers. And that usually happens to me at some point every month. So the first thriller I read was The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware, who is a little bit of a hit or miss thriller author for me. I gave this book 4 stars. I do give a lot of books 4 and 4.5 stars just because I feel like I'm pretty good at this point of knowing what I like. 5 stars, I'm a little bit more picky with giving out, like that is a pretty much perfect book to me. But yeah, if I really like a book but I just see like a couple things that I wish were different, then it probably will fall between 4 and 4.5. And then if a book is more of a miss for me, it probably will land more around a 3.5. Let me know how you rate things, because I was just talking to someone and she said she's so quick to give out 1 stars. And I don't like that because I think every book pretty much has an audience. Some books are quite crappy and maybe that would be like a 2 to a 2.5 stars, but 1 stars I do just kind of think are a little bit disrespectful to the author, and that's just my opinion. I completely understand that people have different ways of rating, and I guess to me, if I'm really hating a book, which doesn't happen too often anymore, I would just DNF it. I'm not gonna give it like a 1 or 2 star. But anyway, I just felt like I needed to say that because I know I do rate so many books 4 and 4.5 stars. So with that being said, I did not totally love this thriller. I thought it was a little bit slow in some parts. Some books I read and I'm like, if this was a movie or a mini series, I feel like it would just work a little bit better, and this kind of fell into that category. So basically the main character in this story, at the beginning of the book, she is kind of down on her luck. She's not doing very well. She is an adult, but she's a young adult, and her mom is no longer alive and she doesn't know anything about her dad. And then just as everything seems to be going to complete crap, she gets a letter that her grandmother has died and she inherits all this money. Which at first I was like, ugh, this is so overdone, even though I do like that setting of like going to the big mansion. I feel like that is just done too much. But the twist is, this isn't actually her grandmother and she knows that. So the main character decides that she is going to go along with it and see if she can get this inheritance money. So if you like Knives Out and that kind of vibe, this is definitely the book for you, because there is like this family there and they all have their certain personalities, of course, and the book is set in this big like falling apart mansion. And the main character is also finding out information about her mom and her family as the book goes on. So I did like the story, but just felt like it was a little bit slow. And then I decided to pick up another thriller that was also not on my TBR, and that is What Have We Done by Alex Finley. And this is the first book I have read by this author, and I know a lot of people really like him, so I was very eager to give this a try. So this one I also gave 4 stars. I said entertaining read. I could definitely see this as a mini series. Fast-paced, multiple perspectives, several twists I didn't see coming, everything I enjoy in a thriller. I thought the writing could have been a little stronger, but it was a fun read. So that was my main issue with this book, was I just wasn't like overly impressed with the writing. There are multiple perspectives in this book. I really like that, and there also are 2 different time periods. We flash back to 25 years in the past throughout the story, and the 3 main characters, Jenna, Donnie, and Nico, they are the best of friends at basically like this orphanage type place. Yeah, it's a group home for parentless teens. When the house was shut down, the 3 were split up and they go on to have very different lives. And then yeah, fast forward 25 years in the future and someone is trying to kill them all. Not very fun, not a good day for them. This was a good fast-paced one. I would definitely recommend this for just like a cozy night in, a good weekend read. And then I started started another series, and that is the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. She's the one who wrote the Inheritance games, which I think did perform, at least on Book Talk, performed a bit better than this one. I did read the first Inheritance games and I liked it. I definitely didn't love it, so I haven't picked up the rest yet, but I definitely will get to them. So I tried to come into this series with like not super high expectations, but just based on the premise of the series, I thought I would like it a little bit more than the Inheritance games. And that was definitely true. I did give the first one 4.5 stars just because I feel like with a lot of first books, it does take some getting into. Then the second book, I ate up 5 stars. But I do think this series is so good so far. There are 4 books total, and spoiler, I will be reading books 3 and 4 during the month of September. But there's a lot of things I like about this book. It follows a group of teenagers. There are 5 of them, and they all have different abilities, but they're not like superpowers. They basically have like really heightened senses, and they all have different things that they can do. So the main character, she can just kind of look at someone, observe someone, and determine all these different things about them. Another guy can read emotions. Another girl is like really good with statistics. So yeah, I do like that it's not like superhero stuff. It's much more psychological. And these teenagers are all supposed to be working on cold cases, but then they do get drug into some real life cases. But I really like the way the books are written. They're very fast paced. I did read both of these in 3 days, I think. And then lastly, I started yet another series, and that is The Thickety. So I picked up all the books in this series at a used bookstore about a year ago, and I definitely wanted to wait until fall to really dive into them. And these are middle grade, but honestly, this was kind of dark, so I would recommend this to basically anybody, but just like if you do have a younger kid, maybe flip through it first before you let them read it. But if you're interested in like the Salem witch trials and you want maybe a more middle grade version of that, it's not like set in Salem, it's not about the witch trials at all, just kind of gave me that vibe. But yeah, if you want like that kind of vibe but a little bit lighter, I would recommend looking into this. I'm really hoping I can finish this series during the fall because it's very much fall energy. And even though this book is almost 500 pages, it is a pretty quick read. So I did end up giving it 4 stars, but honestly, if I was younger, I probably would have given it at least 4.5 stars, maybe even 5 stars. So those were all the books that I read during August, and now let's talk about everything I want to read during the month of September. Alright, so let's quickly go through my TBR. I have 10 books picked out, and I really feel like this could be a whole 5-star month. I don't think that's ever happened to me since I've begun this booktube channel, but I am so excited about all of these books, and I'm hoping I can actually get to them all because I'm looking at this stack and it is looking pretty high. I've picked out 10 books, but as you can see, some of them are quite thick, so we'll see how this month goes, but I feel like I end up doing my most reading in the fall. It gets dark earlier, it's cozy, and I have so many books, not just this month, but for the rest of the fall that I am so looking forward to. But let's talk about these books. So nonfiction of the month is Deadwake by Eric Larson. This was on my TBR for August, and I just unfortunately did not get around to starting it until the very end of the month. And as you can see, I have barely cracked into it, so I can't really say if it's really good yet or not. But this book is following the Lusitania, and there's also some side stories, some romance, some crime. So really excited to fully get into this, but I do like to read nonfiction along with fiction. So I have also started the 4th book in Robert Galbraith's Cormoran Strike series. I'm fully invested in the series and following the main characters at this point, and I like that there is so much emphasis on the characters' development as well as, of course, the crimes in each book. So of course you'll be hearing about this one as well as Deadwake when I do my wrap-up next month, but also enjoying this so far. And since I really did love the first 2 books in the Natural series and I was able to read them pretty quickly, I'm definitely going to be reading books 3 and 4, the last 2 books in the series this month. I feel like I'm going to end up reading these 2 back to back like I did with the first 2. As I said earlier, really good stories, well-paced, good characters. I'm just totally eating it up. And then next we've got Hamnet, which is totally one of my most anticipated reads of the season. I talked about this a bit in my top 10 TBR video for fall that I posted not too long ago, so I will go ahead and link it up above. So I would recommend checking that out if you did miss it. But this is set in 1580 in England, and it's following the Black Death and its effect on a family. And of course that was like not a good time for anybody, but but I do think it's really interesting to read about, and I haven't really read many historical fiction books that are set that far back. I love my early 1900s historical fiction, but I also do think it's really interesting to read about all different time periods. And absolutely one of my favorite covers. Then we've got The Crimson Thread, which also was in my top 10 fall TBR video. This is also historical fiction mixed with kind of like mythological fantasy. This one is set during World War II, May 1941, but it is set in Greece. And I really haven't read any books that are set in Greece, certainly not any historical fiction. And this author, Kate Forsyth, is awesome because she ties in fairy tales or mythology into all of her books. So this one, of course, we're following the war, but also I think the Cyclops character is somehow woven into this story. So I would highly recommend this author if you like historical fiction and fantasy. I've truly loved everything she has written, so I'm definitely expecting 5 stars from this. Now we have The Vanishing Half, which I've been wanting to read for quite a long time. It is a book of the month pick, but I actually did get this at Goodwill. It's funny because I feel like book of the month must be becoming more and more popular because I'm seeing the book of the month symbol more and more often at thrift stores or library sales and places like that. So if you're going to a library sale and you're overwhelmed because usually they're crazy and you only have a few minutes, I would recommend just looking for the book of the month symbol on books because they usually are pretty good. But I've heard excellent things about this one. I really don't know what it's about at all. It says twins inseparable as children ultimately choose to live in 2 very different worlds, one black and one white. So I think this will be really interesting. It says weaving together multiple strands and generations from the Deep South to California, from the 1950s to the 1990s, The Vanishing Half is at once a riveting emotional family story and a brilliant exploration of race, gender, and identity and the lasting influence of the past as it shapes a person's desires and expectations. I'm a psychology person myself, so I feel like this kind of sounds a little bit like a psychological experiment, but I'm sure this will be a very thought-provoking book, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. And then, of course, I have to have a straight-up thriller in here, so we've got Lisa Jules, The Night She Disappeared. As I've talked about in past videos, I've really come to love Lisa Jules. I know she's been around for a while, but just for some reason, I didn't start picking up her books until pretty much this year, although I did read my first one from her last year, and that's what got me into checking her out. But this year, I think I've read at least 4 or 5 from her, and I'm just trying to slowly collect everything she's written at library sales and Goodwill's, places like that. And I have really loved basically everything she's written. I haven't found one that has disappointed me yet, so I'm very eager to read this one. So it sounds like a couple in an English suburb. They go out for the first time since the birth of their infant son. They end up going to a party at a massive country estate, so I just love the setting of this already. But morning comes around and the two don't make it home. And the woman's mother, Kim, is trying to figure out what happens, and then a year goes by, the case goes cold, and somebody else is trying to investigate the case. So it sounds super interesting, not too long or anything, and Lisa Jules' books always read so quickly. I very often read them in one day if I have the time, but definitely a weekend read. Now we have one that I'm a little bit nervous to read, but I am excited to. I do think it could be 5 stars, or I might hate it, I'm really not sure. And that is A Little Life, which so many people have read, so do let me know down below if you have read this one yourself and what you thought about it. But I did recently get this at a library sale for just a couple bucks, so I figured what the heck, I might as well try it out. And I am fully expecting to cry. I know people sob from this book, but I feel like if I go into it with that expectation and I read it at the right time, then I probably will end up really loving this if it is written well. But if you don't know, this story follows 4 college classmates as they move to New York in search of fame and fortune. And I'm really excited for this book too, because it sounds like we're going to be following these people over decades, which I really love. I love sagas that are following a person or a group of people for a long period of time. So I'm excited about this one. I probably will reach for it pretty soon. And then lastly, and it'll truly be a miracle if I can get to all these books, we have Kate Atkinson's Emotionally Weird. Kate Atkinson is one of my favorite authors, definitely a top 5 favorite author for me. She writes a lot of different kind of books. She is famous for a detective series, the Jackson Brodie series. I've read the first couple and I for sure want to read the rest at some point, but just haven't gotten around to it yet. But then she's written some other standalone novels. A lot are historical fiction-esque, and she just has a really interesting and unique writing style. She has really excellent internal dialogue, I think really excellent character development. So I personally love her, but I feel like she is a you either like her or you don't like her kind of author. This one is a standalone, and it says, on a weather-beaten island off the coast of Scotland. Absolutely love that setting. Effie and her mother Nora take refuge in the large moldering house of their ancestors and tell each other stories. But as Effie spins tales of her adventures at college, Nora reveals a series of secrets about her daughter's past, and strange things begin to happen around them. In a brilliant comic narrative that explores the nonsensical power of language and meaning, Kate Atkinson has created a magical masterpiece. So yeah, I think I've given basically everything I've read from Kate Atkinson 5 stars, so expecting great things from that one. But alright everybody, that was my August review and all the books I hope to read during the month of September. Do let me know what you think down below, let me know what you've read, let me know if there are other books that you think I should add to my fall TBR. But if you did like this video, please make sure to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help my channel out a lot. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!